Hi, I'm Coach Corey Wayne, and this is my video coaching newsletter. And the topic of today's newsletter is going to be Don't Date Shy, Structured Women with No Enthusiasm for You. So I got actually two different emails, and both these emails really illustrate the point of the difference between women that really aren't that into you for whatever reason. Maybe they're shy, maybe they're structured, or maybe it's just low interest, low enthusiasm. You want somebody that's excited to spend time with you. And all too often, us guys project that high interest. But these are good emails to learn from, so you know what to look for and what not to look out, what you want to avoid, so you don't go and have dates like this, spend your time and your money on somebody that you get to cheek at the end of the night. So with that said, let's go to the first guy's email. He says, "Hi, Coach. I'm the guy from the previous video newsletter, The Kiss Test, Multiple Failed Attempts." So he says, "Since then, I've read the book 4 more times. I've worked on myself, found more success in my life. I got a promotion at work. I got my first house. I'm fitter and better shape, and I'm going on higher quality dates." He says, "I met this woman on a dating app and was relatively easy to set up a date. We met at a bar, and the initial vibe and conversations were just okay. Just chatting about life in general. It was quite loud, and we walked to the next venue nearby where it was nicer and quieter." Yeah, these are things that you got to kind of think about beforehand, and I mentioned that in 3% Man. If you're going to go to a bar or a jazz club or something like that to listen to music, you got to be far enough away from the stage and the speakers where you can actually converse and talk. So that sounds like a little bit of the guy was slacking on the logistics issue, because it's pretty hard to get to know somebody on a first date when you can't hear each other think or can't hear yourself think. He said, "It was a private club and I knew the staff there and they were friendly to me." He says, "She seemed impressed that I'm a regular and seemed to know everyone there. The conversations and vibe got better." Yeah, because you could actually converse. Super important. You got to think about these things. Too many guys go out on dates. They're applying the book. They're thinking, it's going to probably take me several dates. They go out on a first date. They follow what's in the book, and the girl's ready to sleep with them, but they're like 45 minutes away from their house or an hour away, or some weird logistical thing is going on. And they didn't think ahead. He says, "She was enthusiastic, seemed excited, and asked many personal questions about me, doing 80 to 20% of the talking. In other words, she was doing 80%, he was doing 20%. She got more relaxed, sat a little closer, and at one point intentionally sat in such a way that our legs were touching." Well, that's a good sign. "We talked about our parents, siblings, friends, travel, and her life growing up. I was surprised at how similar we were. For instance, she had volunteered for 5 years at the same charity I am volunteering at now. I was being playful throughout, tried some light touching on my part, but noticed it was not reciprocated, so I stopped." And so he's doing correctly what's in the book, which is the woman starts bumping into you, you slowly reciprocate. He started to slowly reciprocate, it went no further. He says, "Later on, I tried the kiss test by looking in her eyes and her lips, but she wasn't looking at my lips." That should tell you a lot. He says, "I led her by exploring more of the place in the different rooms to make it more of an experience. I noticed she was cold, so I gave her my coat. Conversations and vibe were good throughout the night, but there was still very minimal touching from her. When walking to different rooms, there was also no bumping into me. I still kept my hands to myself." The idea is it doesn't mean she's definitely always 100% going to do this. It's as she feels comfortable, as she feels more attracted. But the good news is he's observant. He's watching these things, these little subtle buying signals, if you will. At some point, she pulled back, sat down with her legs not touching mine, and she put her bag between us. So what you're seeing there is something happened, maybe something he said, something he did that turned her off. If you've ever been in a room full of women and you're telling a really good story and they're all attracted to you and their knees or their body language is all pointed towards you, and then you say something self-deprecating or something that makes you look weak, you'll notice in unison all the ladies, their legs cross the other way, away from you. It's amazing how that energy and that vibe changes like that. As a man, you express interest or you express weakness with women that are attracted to you, they have a physiological response. It happens subconsciously. It's pretty fascinating to watch. And that's why it's just, if it's not going to make her more attracted to you, if it's not going to make you look more masculine, more strong, more interesting, more attractive, keep it to yourself. So if you don't believe me, just try it. Next time you're in a room with women that you know that like you, and you're holding court, and you're having a conversation, and they're all leaning towards you, their knees are pointed in your direction with their legs crossed, say something that makes you look weak, and you'll notice that all the knees in unison will just, they'll change the other way. Without even them thinking about it, it just happens. He says, I still kept my hands to myself, and at some point she pulled back, sat down with her legs not touching, and she put her bag between us. I was unperturbed and just continued chatting. Eventually, she put her handbag away, sat closer till our legs started touching, and we were teasing, and she finally touched my arm and my leg slightly. I still kept my cool. After a while, she pulled back again. Finally, I walked her to her place, and also no bumping into me. At the end, she said she had fun, and I kissed her before heading home. I felt as if she didn't really kiss me back. So you kissed her, and it was just, maybe no tongue? No. That's a buzzkill. The whole night, you're trying to show her a good time, and it's just, You're looking for enthusiasm. This all are things that you can avoid this by vetting her when you're talking to her. This is why if you're doing online dating, you should do a phone call, ideally a FaceTime or a video date if you can, because you can read her body language better. At least with a phone call, you can hear the tone of her voice. If you can't carry a conversation on over the phone, you don't need to meet in person. But a lot of guys will make dates off the app and meet the girl and then go, it's like trying to talk to her is like pulling teeth. And then you're sitting there, you got all dressed up, you left out a space in your one free night a week that you had open. You go on a date, and you're spending money there, sitting talking to a girl that's just, like, that's buzzkill. That's disappointing. So you're out your time, you're out your money, and you get a for a kiss. Was the juice worth the squeeze? I would say not. But again, this is important, whether you're doing a cold approach or whatever, it's like the conversation's got to flow. You want to see enthusiasm there. If it's not there, you can't make it happen. He says, the date was last Friday, and it is Tuesday now, and it's been no contact ever since. I will send her a follow-up text tonight, and I think her attraction level is low in the 50 to 60 range, or the 5 to 6 out of 10 range. Did I do everything right by not being pushy? Was she just shy, or just simply not that interested? Yeah, it didn't seem like she was that interested. But you're practicing, and you're like, hey, well, let's see what happens. Maybe she'll be a little more interested the next time. So this obviously email came in a couple days ago, so I assume he reached out to her. So maybe he'll send us a follow-up and let us know if she responded or she ghosted or whatever. But it'd be interesting to see what happens. But this next email is kind of like you kind of see what happens. This particular dude got stood up. Then afterwards, he texted something back to her after she stood him up. And then they ended up having a date. And I won't spoil it, but it's just the whole intent here is like the lack of enthusiasm. The lack of, hell yeah, I'd love to see you. And so when you don't get that excited vibe to be with you and you're asking a girl out, these are the consequences of it. So this is a really good email to end the video with. He says, hello, my name is Bob, and I wanted to write you about following your instincts. I have been following your work for a few years now, but I've only read 3% Man 3 times now. As a result, I've paid the price. Every time things started going good, I started getting complacent and things eventually fell apart. So what happened was you started displaying attractive behaviors, which are in 3% Man, or I say accentuating your attractive behaviors. But the longer you were together, you're like, okay, I'm going to go right back to the way I was. And then you go back to displaying mostly unattractive behaviors, and it turns her off predictably. It's as predictable as the sun coming up in the east and setting in the west. And so if you want to be an attractive man and keep your girl attractive, you got to behave in certain ways that are masculine and attractive. And if you're not disciplined enough, you're going to suffer the consequences of it. He says, I guess I learned the hard way. Anyways, today's story is about red flags. I started talking to a girl on Bumble, and we hit it off really well. I made sure to keep the text short and to get the phone number to set a date. The phone is for setting dates and not to getting to know each other. Well, if you're meeting a girl online, you should chat with her for at least 10 or so minutes just to see how the conversation goes. Because you want to screen out women that aren't really that into you and that you don't click with on the phone. Because obviously if you'd met her in person, this wouldn't have been an issue. You would have already noticed the enthusiasm was there. But if you're just strictly doing online dating, I would do the additional step to talk on the phone. There'll be some girls that won't want to do that, and they'll dip out, and that's okay. You want women that are flexible, that are submissive, that will do the things you like and the things that you ask, not be combative, not go, I don't like talking on the phone. So if you get that kind of an attitude, just move on. Swipe on to the next one. He says, I picked a venue and a time, and she said she was excited to see me. The day of the date arrives, and we have a few brief exchanges as I had a solo hike planned. 2 hours before the date, I reached out, and she told me she was going to be late. I said, no worries. I showed up at the meeting point and waited for 30 minutes. I messaged her and said, hey, I'm here. No reply. I could see she was online, but did not reply. How rude is that? I mean, she did that on purpose. She's just so selfish, so narcissistic, so self-centered. She lets a guy get ready and go to a venue. He's sitting there waiting for her, and she gives him the impression that she's going to show up. Then she just blows him off like it's nothing. And unfortunately, if you're going to be doing online dating, these are the things going to happen. Even sometimes it might happen in person. He says, an hour passed, and I asked her if she was coming. Still no reply, so I went home and left it at that. This was the first time I had ever gotten stood up, and it bothered me. 2 weeks had passed, and since rejection breeds obsession, I finally reached out passive-aggressively saying, your loss. So keep in mind, well, I don't want to spoil a surprise, but you'll see her behavior and the way she treated him and why she responds to this. You'll go, once you understand, when you hear about her family situation, you'll go, I'll connect some dots. She replied instantly and she said that, I like the fact that you see your worth. I used that as leverage, and we started talking again, and I booked another date. I would have never done that. He says this time she had to travel to me as I was not going to risk it again, but it would be a bar near my house in the evening. The day arrived, and she showed up. We had a good date, and I was able to take her back home to my place, but the indoor Olympics did not happen as she said she was feeling sick with the flu. So we just watched TV in bed as I could not make any advances. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. That's what's in the book. But he did, let's see, did he say this particular guy, he's been following me he's read it 3 times. So I would say probably more than likely he didn't understand 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And so she said, he probably tried to advance things. She said, no, I get the flu. So they just hung out there. He says, in my mind, I thought this was just a test and she's not sure about her attraction to me. Yeah, you don't know the book. Bottom line is she came home with you and is in your bed. He says, I used the time to learn about who she is and thought of the type of woman to avoid for a 3% man. I learned that she is, so here's the reason. So he says, I learned that she is not close to her family, dislikes her father, hates her home country of France, as it's too macho, toxic masculinity. Sounds like she got some of the feminism virus. Had 2 abusive 5-year relationships that ended with the police. It just gets better and better. Lied to immigration to get into Canada. Does not believe in relationships, kids, or marriage. Gee, I wonder why she stood you up. She's got daddy issues. And she probably did on purpose just to give you the middle finger because she's pissed off at men. She's pissed off at her dad because he was a bitch. or is a bitch, was a bitch. I don't know if he's alive or not, but bottom line, her dad was a bitch, not a man. And so this is the result. He says she also threw in the fact that she had a sugar daddy and willingly slept with married men. Doesn't care about loyalty, monogamy. I mean, who's going to teach her this? She's like in survival mode. She doesn't trust anybody. She doesn't trust men, obviously. Her father was never there for her. And so she gets involved with guys that she can take advantage of. And when she gets on a dating app, she made a date, she thought nothing of just blowing this guy off. And the only reason she goes out with him was the fact that he called her out, put her in her place. All he said was your loss. But she liked that. And then she goes and keeps a date with him. These are the kind of women you're like, oh yeah, you just treat them like shit and they'll love you. It's like these kind of women, yeah, that actually works for her. Because that's the way the father treated them. You treat her like the father, you trigger her, you make her feel the same way. He says, the next day we said goodbye, and that was the end of my interaction. The moral, this is the lesson from the story, ladies and gentlemen. The moral of the story is when something starts off bad, there's no point in continuing. Yep. Yeah, it sucks that, she stood you up. But you did have an opportunity to redeem yourself. But it's probably better off that you did not, because you would definitely not have been the first guy in that hallway. I could have just left it at being stood up, but this offered me some peace of mind as to why she is not dateable. Hey, market research, you know what? And thanks for sharing it, because everybody that watches this video can learn from it as if they experienced it. And so, again, the shy, the structured woman, women that stand you up, women that you don't talk to on the phone, through online dating. You have to vet people properly, because otherwise you end up with this. You end up wasting your time, you waste your money, and then you have a bad experience. So you got to do the little things. But, I mean, you learn through pain, right? Pain is life's change agent. It's life's way of saying, hey, what you're doing is not working. You need to change your approach. But, again, you got two mediocre, just girls that don't really care, yet they still go out with you. But what's the net result? Not somebody like the second case. You're not going to want to date that girl. You're not going to have a relationship with her. She doesn't have the goals, doesn't have the values. She doesn't care. She belongs to the streets. You can't fix that. You can't work with that. You just hook up with that. And then you move on. But like I said, I wouldn't even mess with that, because there's probably been a lot of dudes. She might have a body count in the hundreds by now. Who knows? So if you got a question or a challenge, you'd like to get my help, go to understandingrelationships.com, click the products tab at the top of your screen, and book a coaching session with yours truly. Until next time, I will talk to you soon.